When thinking about what I was going to talk about, or title actually this presentation, there's a theme that's going on in my life that I think a lot of us apply on a regular basis. And I decided to title it Make No Small Plans. And has anybody heard that term before? Right here, Michelle. Where does it come from?
It's a book.
It's a book from who?
Founder of Summit.
Yeah, it's a book from the Founders of Summit series. And if anybody knows Summit series and what they did and why that applies to what we're doing here, is that the Founders of Summit series raised money from their community. They had about a 3,000 person community, and they bought a mountain in Utah to build an entrepreneur community. And so very relevant to what's happening here with Liron and what I'm going to talk about. And I'll dive more into that story about Summit and Summit series here in a bit. But I wanted to give it a tagline here called Connection, Community, and Collaboration from Costa Rica to the other side of the world in Italy. And so I thought about why, I tried to get into Liron's mind and thought about why he invited me to speak. And there could be some potential downsides, you know. Technically, what I'm doing over in Italy, which is similar to what's happening here, is competition, right? I could come up on the stage and present something really awesome to you guys, and Yoko and Liron could lose some potential customers and clients. It's true. And in the world of competitive traditional business, it's kind of a really silly and stupid thing to do. So there may be some people in the audience saying, why, Liron, why? So I'll tell you here in a second, there's two reasons. One, I'm going to save for the very end. If I don't tell you, if I forget, remind me. But I'm going to save that one for the very end. But also, I'm going to show you why, here in a second, why I think he did it. So I had to scroll through his Facebook and go very, very deep into his Facebook to find a crazy looking picture. What year is this from? Do you remember?
2008, maybe?
Yeah, so I scrolled a long way down. And the reason is because the vast majority of his photos on his social media feed look like this. And he's got a big smile on all of them, and he's around people. And you can tell those are people that love him and people that he loves. And they're doing really epic and very cool things. Especially this one down in the left corner. While you might question the sexuality of these two gentlemen, while they're floating on a rainbow unicorn in a pool hugging each other, they still look very happy, you know. So, but it goes back to the heart of Liron, right? And he wanted me to come up on stage because I think my message can help all of us, and what I'm about to talk about can help all of us live more abundant, fruitful, and joyful lives, and we can share more of that with the world. So I've been a digital nomad, I guess. Well, I technically don't consider myself a digital nomad anymore, but I was a digital nomad for about 10 years. I started in Manuel Antonio in 2011, just down the road, and I spent a year in Costa Rica. And it was a dream. It was one of the most, the coolest thing, you know, I read the 4-Hour Workweek as one of the coolest things that I felt like I could ever do. And based on where I come from in Missouri, it was the coolest thing anybody I know had ever done. And so I spent a year there, but one thing kept coming up for me. When I was in Manuel Antonio, I was very lonely, even though I was in a relationship with a girl. And I didn't know at the time why. And it took me actually a couple more years of traveling the world to figure that out. I arrived somewhere and I found my tribe. I found my community. And while I was living the dream life in Costa Rica, I just didn't feel like I had my people. And I felt very lost during that time. So over the years, I kept looking for a home. I kept looking for a place, and I think many of us can relate to this. You look for a place to call your own. And what I found personally is that I found a home where I had my community. Wherever my like-minded entrepreneurs were, whether they were in Thailand, Brazil, Europe, I felt at home. And so let's back up here. And so in 2018, I arrived in Tuscany. On a whim, I just decided to go there. I was in a relationship with it at the time. And we ended up finding an apartment, well, a little cottage in Tuscany on this vineyard. And we spent 7 months there. And those 7 months turned out to be some of the best memories of my life, but also the most romantic 7 months of my life. So living in a place like Tuscany, everything is romantic. You go to the grocery store, it's romantic. You get a haircut, it's romantic. Some barber is singing some Italian song. It's just like oozes with romance. But something happened to me when I was there. I traveled the world at that time for, I think, 7 years. And one time I was running down the road, our country road. There's vineyards on one side, there's sunflowers on the other. There's these Italian cottages everywhere. And something really hit me. It was one of those triggering moments that was like an aha, beautiful moment. And you ever have those times when you just hear a whisper, like the universe is talking to you and it's telling you to do something? And for me, it was telling me my place was there. My place was in Tuscany. And I wasn't just going to spend a few months there this time. I was going to spend a significant amount of my life there. And not only that, I was going to help bring more people there. And what happened while I was traveling the world and going to all these places, looking for a home, following my community, because that felt like my home, what happened is the home actually found me. And if you guys know anything about Liran's story, very similar. He came to Santa Teresa in the late 2000s, and then he was gone. He stayed a while, and then he was gone for quite a few years. Then he came back, and he decided, like, this is a place I'm going to build a home. I had that feeling in Tuscany, very similar. It's like unlike any other feeling that I had. But my vision at the time was, I thought maybe I'd get a place, a big villa with 6 or 7 bedrooms, and I could invite my friends and fellow entrepreneurs over to stay anytime they want. We'd have like 20 acres and a swimming pool and maybe host like events like this, smaller type of retreats. And then a couple Vespas, and we could just eat pizza and drink wine and be merry, right? And then something happened. Excuse me, before I jump into that, here's the picture of where I lived in Tuscany. So this is basically my front yard, backyard, side yard, from where we were at. And we did that. I'm gonna skip over that here. And then something happened. And it goes back to the theme of make no small plans. So when so I left Tuscany in 2018. I planned to go back in 2019, but because of some personal things, I couldn't make it back. 2020, I was going to spend a few months in Austin. COVID happened, so I ended up staying there 2 years. And but when I was there, I really longed for Tuscany. I longed to be back in Europe. And during that time, too, I had really wanted to interview one of the founders of Summit Series, and get them on the podcast. And so I got an individual, and his name was Ryan Beagleman, on the podcast. And so during the interview, I asked him about, all the details of what it was like to build a community and then buy a mountain for your community. So what happened? Yeah. They're enjoying the presentation. So what happened is they found a distressed ski resort that somebody had bought a few years prior, worth $150 million, and they were losing money on it. So they put it on sale for $40 million, and then the founders of Summit came in, and they thought, let's pre-raise this money. Let's reach out to our community. Let's sell 40 lots at $1 million each for our founding member investors. And then after we sell 250, we give them all their money back. Then we have our mountain outright. It's paid for, and we can develop the ski resort, and we can build homes on there. So today, that mountain, it's called Powder Mountain. It's in Utah. It's a full-fledged entrepreneur community. They run retreats there, and the ski resort is fully operational. But when I was interviewing Ryan, again, had another aha moment. Another thing came to me. And I thought to myself, if they can do this in a place like Utah, of all places, I can build an entrepreneur community on a vineyard in Tuscany. Because Utah's kind of cool, but Tuscany is much cooler. And so while I was in Austin, I longed to be back in Europe. I longed to be in Italy. And I don't know if you guys have ever lived in a place that doesn't feel like a place where you don't belong. But when I was in Austin, although it's an amazing city and there's an amazing network, I felt kind of icky. And I thought to myself many times, like, what am I doing here? Like, I feel like I'm wasting my life. And I judge a city based on how I feel when I fly into it. So if I fly into like Barcelona, if I fly into Italy, I feel really good. I feel like I'm coming home. But when I flew into Austin, I felt like just kind of this icky feeling. And so it was really strange because everybody loves Austin, but for me, it was just like, this isn't my place. So living in Austin, what I did is I bought wall art of Italy and I put it all around my house. And then I hosted entrepreneurs over at our house and I told them the story, the vision of what I wanted to do in Italy. And it got a lot of momentum. And then while I was living in Italy, I had 3 friends, all of them couples, that invested in this entrepreneur village in Costa Rica. 2 are sitting here, Adam and Kat are back there, Jason and Kristen are right here. So ironic that they're all here. And when I heard about all of these friends investing in this entrepreneur village, I thought, like, this is the time. This is the time to start moving. This is the time to start doing stuff because more and more of these are going to pop up, and I really want to make this happen. So enter Paul. Paul is a dear friend of mine, and I think a lot of you have met him over this past week. And he's a mentor, and him and I walked the Camino de Santiago in 2014. And if you don't know what that is, it's a 500-mile pilgrimage, 800 kilometers across the north of Spain. So we got to know each other really well during that time. And he became a mentor then, and we stayed in touch over the years. We didn't see each other much, but a few times a year we'd have a call, and he'd give me advice on what to do. And so it's a year ago this month. I was in Playa del Carmen, and I called up Paul. We were having our regular chat, and I told him about this vision in Tuscany. And he goes, Chris, I want to go to Europe later this summer or early fall. He says, pick some dates, and we'll just go look at vineyards. And I was like, it was the moment like a friend kind of called you out on something you really wanted to do. And I was like, oh shit, now I really have to do something to make this happen. And so this nervousness came up in me. And then Paul, he follows up really well, but he follows up very abruptly when he sends you a text message or on his email. And so about 2 days later, he sent me a message, have any dates for Tuscany yet? And I was like, oh shit. And then I was like, yeah, maybe like late summer, July, August. And then he sent me another message a couple weeks later, trying to figure out dates for Europe. Have you got anything yet? I'm like, oh no. And it wasn't until July, and we had another conversation in July, and he's still like pushing me for dates. He's like, let's go look at vineyards. Let's go look at vineyards. And we had a group trip planned to Morocco, and I was like, after Morocco, why don't we just hop up to Tuscany and we can look at some vineyards. I'll work with the realtor and we'll get something laid out. And since we're going to Tuscany Morocco with some entrepreneurs, maybe we'll bring a couple people up with us. So I thought maybe there'd be like 3 or 4 of us that went. And so I started telling friends and people that I knew about what we were going to do. And they started asking, can we go with you? Can we go with you? So we ended up having 12 or 13 people come with us. And everybody that was very interested in coming and seeing the properties and getting a villa, possibly. Now, little life hack, if you guys ever want the best Tuscan Italian tour of your life, just pretend you're interested in investing in multi-million-dollar properties, and you will have the most amazing guided tour, really. And we went on these vineyards that were thousands of, not thousands, but hundreds of years old, that families have been making their own wine there. We toured a vineyard that we're pretty sure was a Russian oligarch's vineyard, and he's trying to get rid of it to get some money and manage what's happening in Russia. And we toured an abandoned village that hadn't been lived in since World War II because they were fascists. And they had to get out before, the Allies came and got them. And so it was an incredible experience. And so when planning that trip to Tuscany, one individual, which he was just up here on stage, he said, I told him I was going to Tuscany, and he goes, awesome, I'm going to Morocco with you. I'm just going to come up, and that project sounds incredible. And so here we have 12 of us, and we're planning to go there and look at all these villages or vineyards and see if we can find a place for our entrepreneur home in Italy. So we had about 8 properties to view, and we found a property that was better than we could have ever imagined. I thought we would find a property, we'd have to rehabilitate everything, we'd spend probably millions of dollars making this nice community. And on the 3rd property that we found this place called Poggio Cinina. And Poggio Cinina is about an hour south of Florence and about 30 minutes from Siena, if anybody knows the area. It's in the south of the Chianti region in Italy. And when we arrived there, we had our realtor, we had the group of us, and we had, there was a woman and an older man, probably in his 60s or so. And they were taking us through this. And what it is an actual resort. It was designed as a health resort, Tuscan style, with Tuscan style homes. So you could go on a little getaway or a holiday and relax and stay healthy at the same time. Now, what we didn't know at the time is that this was designed and built by a guy named Paolo Rossi. So is there any Italians or football or soccer fans in the audience? Do you know who Paolo Rossi is? No? Yes? No? Yes, you raised your hand? No, okay. Did you grow up in Italy?
No, my family.
Okay. Anybody from Italy?
Half.
Half? Did you grow up in Italy?
Sicily, my family did though.
Okay, you know who Paolo Rossi is?
I've heard of it.
Okay. Anyway, if there's an Italian that grew up in Italy for the full-time life, everybody knows who Paolo Rossi is. Paolo Rossi won the 1982 World Cup, and he's an Italian football soccer player. And this was his property. This was his dream. This was his vision. And we were actually meeting with his wife and his 2 daughters, his widow, because he unfortunately passed away in 2019 from lung cancer, and his former best friend, business partner. And they were taking us on a tour of this place, and it was heavenly. It was built less than 10 years ago. It was being run as a resort. It had 3 swimming pools. It has 2 jet pools. It has a soccer field / football pitch, tennis court. It has a steam room. It has a gym. It has mountain bikes. It had everything. And Kristen and myself were walking around the property, and we were just doing backflips. We could see the vision immediately. We were like, this is beautiful. If we could acquire this, it's move-in ready. We don't have to do that much, and it's perfect. And so here's a few more pictures. Now, it's on this incredible vineyard. These are and this is the kitchen here. This is a cafe wine bar that they have. There's also a place for kind of restaurants, a restaurant and where people eat breakfast in the morning. And somehow I got the wrong picture. Anyway, if you see these bottles right here, this is actually the wine that's produced on the property. It is 85 hectares and of an organic wine vineyard, and then it has 85 hectares, and then it has a vineyard. It has an olive grove. It has wooded area. It has a pond. And it's split up in 2 different hamlets. A hamlet is a group of small villas, and a group of villas. So we have a north hamlet and a south hamlet. And there's a beautiful walk between the 2 hamlets that's about 10 minutes through the field, through the vineyard. And it's incredible. So I'm going to take you guys on a tour of Poggio Cinina so you can see exactly what it is, because it's hard to describe. I try to do my best, but visually it's going to be much better. So if you guys can start playing the video now. We've got 2 short videos that are about a minute long here. So this is the countryside here. That hamlet you saw was the North Hamlet. This is the North Hamlet also. This is the entrance. Olive groves down on the bottom here. Vineyard up on the top right. This is where they host weddings currently. They host events. We want to run conferences on the North Hamlet. Soccer field, tennis court. This is the cafe, wine bar, and also the gym there. This is all the North Hamlet. It's quite beautiful. Very Tuscan. And we have another quick video that's going to come up. You guys look on the back side, there's on the adjoining property, there's actually a castle. This is the wooded area of the property back here. It's quite a few, 40 acres of wooded area, I believe. I think that's 20 hectares or so. We have the next video. They're building a restaurant, an underground restaurant that looks at this view right here, down those rows of the vineyard. I'll show you the other part of the restaurant. We're going to turn that restaurant into a co-working cafe. So we'll have co-working side, like private meeting rooms as well, and then a little cafe. Mountains on the back side here. It's really surrounded by wooded mountains, so you do feel like you're kind of just in the middle of, you're just this oasis in Italy. And what else? That villa in the top left was the house of Paolo Rossi here.
How's the cycling around there?
It's great. A lot of people cycle for sure. You saw we went past it, but there was some construction area underground. That's where the co-working cafe will be. Since this is being run as a resort already, there's a castle in the background here. There's also another castle up on the top of a mountain in a little village as well. And then the view of what you'll see when you're working on your computer. And over here is actually the South Hamlet. What we're going to do is we're going to sell the South Hamlet the way that Liron is selling the units here in Yoko. And then we're going to use the North Hamlet for short-term stays and high-end business retreats. And we want to do something really cool, like intertwine the opportunity that people, for the owners and the investors of the property, they get access to a lot of the business retreats that come there. So you get some free conferences and retreats. Anybody that invests into the property as well, you get a small percentage in the wine and olive oil business. And the name of the wine and olive oil business is Poggio Chinina, the name of the property as well. And I think that's about it. So again, going back to why Liron invited me to speak, is because the idea behind this is, instead of working as competitors, how can we work as collaborators? How great would it be to know that on the other side of the world, there's a property where you're going to get a very similar experience to Yoko, just in Italy. You're going to have the high-speed internet, you're going to have the facilities, you're going to have all the things. Eventually we'll incorporate for families to get some sort of schooling and educational system there as well. And so that's where Kristen and Cardia comes in. And Cardia's job is to come in and inject some funds into our projects so we can go from here to here much quicker, all of us, and we can collaborate together. We can discuss marketing together and what it's like to bring more people to the properties and to sell these homes. We can discuss the logistics of doing that and all the heartaches and the hard things of building it. And so the great thing about Cardia, and I don't know how much you guys know about the company, is that when Kristen operates Cardia, the actual name of it means heart in Latin. And so everything he does is heart-centered. And so any investment that he puts money into has to have win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win-win situations all around. He wants to make sure that his investments in that Cardia invests into are not going to have any negative effects, or at least minimal negative effects, if any at all, in anything that they do. And that's why Kristen was so excited about the Tuscan Village and Yoko at the same time, because it's a lot of win-win-win situations that are helping people grow, helping entrepreneurs expand their businesses, helping the communities at the same time, giving people jobs, helping education for our children and our future children that we have. And the idea is we have an alliance, like Star Alliance and One World, where we make a difference there and we work together to do something bigger and more important. And there's another reason Liron wanted to have me up and speak, is because he told me this afternoon he actually wants an Italian villa himself. So I'm going to wrap up there. Thank you guys for giving me your attention. Any questions before I hop off stage really quick?
The Italian villa thing was the last thing you wanted to tell when you said to remind you the last thing you wanted to say?
Yeah, that LeBron wants he wants his own Tuscan villa. Yeah.
Hey, Chris?
Yeah.
Has there already been any conversations about partnering between, let's say, Yoko and Tuscan Village and house swapping and all that?
Yes, a lot of that. And we haven't confirmed anything because the sellers just signed our offer 2 weeks ago. And so we're in due diligence to acquire the property, but everything's looking great. The sellers love us. Yeah, so that's in conversations just to, yeah, also. Anything else? Yeah.
How many villas do you have there?
We have 30 unit/villas in total. And I'm glad you asked that, Kristen, because there's a part I forgot. We're going to sell about 18 of those and then use, and people can rent those out. One of the things we want to do is create a database to rent them out only to entrepreneurs and nomads as much as possible, so it keeps that entrepreneur spirit there. And then also use the short-term rentals and the retreat center over on the north side. Now, we've also identified another property that's much bigger. And so we're in the process of acquiring this one, but there's another property that's 1,600 acres, roughly 800 hectares, that is an abandoned village on top of this mountain, and that we want to rehabilitate, put a lot of money into it, rehabilitate, and now have the opportunity to have like 60 units in. And then on the land, there are 22 more villas that we can rehabilitate and sell as well. So the idea in that community is to create a full entrepreneur Italian village where we have the Italian barber and the Italian cafe and the the Italian pizzeria and all the things, so you can experience it there. So, okay, any more questions? One more, yeah.
What's your podcast?
My podcast? Oh, the Business Method podcast. Yeah. Okay, you guys, thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate you listening to me. You know, for Chris Reynolds, everyone.